"You're welcome to stay with me," the old man said. "I will give you anything you might need. But whatever you do, don't spend the night in the square." Maybe we'll get an explanation here in a bit as to why, spending the night in the square would have been a bad thing, or it was just the old man being hospitable to them. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Bit of a content warning on this one, just so you're aware. This is one of those chapters that has some very not so PG events in it, just to let you know. Okay, so we are looking at Judges chapter 19 now. So the previous couple of chapters involved a guy named Micah who had like a household idol, had a Levite, pass near his house. Micah was like, "Hey, come live with me. You can be my own personal priest. I'll give you money to live off of and, a house and food and things like that." And the Levite's like, "Okay, sure. I was looking for a place to live anyway." But then a bunch of people from the tribe of Dan come through, and long story short, as they're on their way to take over another town to give themselves a more permanent residence, they stop by Micah's house, take the Levite and the idol and a bunch of stuff like that. They go conquer the town, and then they, as a tribe, basically start worshiping this idol after they've, set the town up, or whatever. Maybe it was technically before, but whatever. Point is, they're living in this town now, and they worship this idol that they took from Micah. And the Levite that was with Micah is also now with them. So, anyway. And I guess that brings us to chapter 19 here. So here we go. Now in those days, Israel had no king. Second chapter in a row, it's mentioned that, like right out the gate. There was a man from the tribe of Levi living in a remote area of the hill country of Ephraim. One day he brought home a woman from Bethlehem in Judah to be his concubine. But she became angry with him and returned to her father's home in Bethlehem. After about 4 months, her husband set out for Bethlehem to speak personally to her and persuade her to come back. He took with him a servant and a pair of donkeys. When he arrived at her father's house, her father saw him and welcomed him. Her father urged him to stay a while, so he stayed 3 days, eating, drinking, and sleeping there. Okay, so this would appear to not maybe so much be the same Levite that was with Micah earlier. But anyway, Levite finds a woman in Bethlehem to be his concubine. Like, again, I feel like it's specifying or, mentioning the whole thing about Israel having no king, in part because it's trying to sort of emphasize the, maybe not total lawlessness, but the lack of organized, structured worship and even just general practices and ways of living were just kind of people doing their own thing. So anyway, this stuff happens, but the woman becomes angry with him and leaves. He eventually goes back to try and convince her to go back with him, and he's at her father's house, staying there for a few days at least. Footnotes. Okay. Rather than being angry with him, it could say that she was unfaithful to him. Which, if she was the kind to be taken as a concubine, wouldn't be entirely surprising. Let's just say concubines weren't exactly generally faithful women. That's all the more explanation I'm going to give there, because otherwise I'm going to get possibly beyond PG with any of that explanation. So, anyway. And then there's a footnote down here. This says in the Greek version, Hebrew reads, when she brought him to her father's house. So, it could have been that he saw her first, but she brought him to her father's house so he would have a place to stay while he was there, or something to that effect. Anyway, the broader situation remains the same, though, that he is there at her father's house for, well, at least 3 days. Until we get to verse 5 and what it describes. On the 4th day, the man was up early, ready to leave. But the woman's father said to his son-in-law, Have something to eat before you go. So the two men sat down together and had something to eat and drink. Then the woman's father said, Please stay another night and enjoy yourself. The man got up to leave, but his father-in-law kept urging him to stay, so he finally gave in and stayed the night. On the morning of the 5th day, he was up early again, ready to leave, and again the woman's father said, Have something to eat, then you can leave later this afternoon. So they had another day of feasting. Later, as the man and his concubine and servant were preparing to leave, his father-in-law said, Look, it's almost evening. Stay the night and enjoy yourself. Tomorrow you can get up early and be on your way. Seems like this man really doesn't want the Levite to go. That's the vibe I'm picking up here. What exactly his reasoning for it is, I have no clue. And it's not really stated here. But also, it's saying father-in-law as if they're married. It didn't previously state that they were married. But, I don't know. Anyway. It's just kind of an odd dynamic going on there. So he stays basically an extra 2 days. Or, well, okay, he stayed one extra day for sure. And then maybe a little bit extra into a 5th day. And then, verse 10. But this time the man was determined to leave. So he took his 2 saddled donkeys and his concubine and headed in the direction of Jebus? That is Jerusalem. Okay. It was late in the day when they neared Jebus, and the man's servant said to him, Let's stop at this Jebusite town and spend the night there. Okay, maybe it's pronounced Jebus. Because I definitely, most people tend to pronounce that Jebusite, to my understanding. Anyway, so they stop at this place because of how late in the day that they left this other man's house, which was where again? I guess it was around Bethlehem, huh? Yeah, okay. Anyway, so servant says, let's stop at this town and spend the night here. And then verse 12. No, his master said, we can't stay in this foreign town where there are no Israelites. Instead, we will go on to Gibeah. Come on. Let's try to get as far as Gibeah or Ramah. and will spend the night in one of those towns." So they went on. The sun was setting as they came to Gibeah, a town in the land of Benjamin. So they stopped there to spend the night. They rested in the town square, but no one took them in for the night. Okay. So, interesting that, well, I guess it was a town that was in the direction of Jerusalem. It wasn't Jerusalem itself. Also, it apparently wasn't even called Jerusalem at this time. Maybe. Anyway, so the Levite apparently wants to make sure that they stay at an Israelite town rather than some other place. You would think the town that was originally suggested by the servant eventually becomes an Israelite town, but maybe it just isn't right now because, there's still some other possible expanding of territory going on as well. Because it was established previously, at least in Joshua, maybe, that, there was still more land for them to conquer within the general promised land area. Even after, the divisions were kind of decided on. But anyway, so they get to Gibeah, and they rested in the town square for the night. And then, verse 16. That evening an old man came home from his work in the fields. He was from the hill country of Ephraim, but he was living in Gibeah, where the people were from the tribe of Benjamin. When he saw the travelers sitting in the town square, he asked them where they were from and where they were going. "We have been in Bethlehem in Judah," the man replied. "We are on our way to a remote area in the hill country of Ephraim, which is my home. I traveled to Bethlehem, and now I am returning home. But no one has taken us in for the night, even though we have everything we need. We have straw and feed our donkeys and plenty of bread and wine for ourselves." "You're welcome to stay with me," the old man said. "I will give you anything you might need. But whatever you do, don't spend the night in the square." So he took them home with him and fed the donkeys. After they washed their feet, they ate and drank together. Okay, so bit of a connection between this old man and the Levite, being that they're both from Ephraim. It's just this old man was now living in Gibeah, whereas the Levite was kind of just passing through. Maybe we'll get an explanation here in a bit as to why, spending the night in the square would have been a bad thing, or it was just the old man being hospitable to them. I don't know. Anyway, footnote here says this is basically derived from the Greek version. Hebrew reads, "Now I'm going to the tabernacle of the Lord," which wouldn't necessarily have been the same as his home. But, I don't know. He was a Levite, though, so going to the tabernacle would have made some sense, too. Anyway, the point, the big picture thing, though, either way, is that he's just passing through. So he stays the night with this old man. They washed their feet, they ate and drank together. And then verse 22. While they were enjoying themselves, a crowd of troublemakers from the town surrounded the house. They began beating at the door and shouting at the old man. Bring out the man who is staying with you so we can have sex with him. This sounds rather Sodom and Gomorrah kind of thing. I think it was Sodom in particular. Anyway, the old man stepped outside to talk to them. No, my brothers, don't do such an evil thing, for this man is a guest in my house, and such a thing would be shameful. Here, take my virgin daughter and this man's concubine. I will bring them out to you, and you can abuse them and do whatever you like. But don't do such a shameful thing to this man. Again, very much like Lot's situation in Sodom. And once again, I return to the whole idea of the fact that it says there's no king in Israel, hinting at a kind of lawlessness of a sort around even just the nation of Israel, despite the fact that they were supposed to be God's people and living how God would have preferred and other things like that. But I guess given that they had no one ruling over them and kind of enforcing these things, they just kind of did what they wanted. So the man says, for them that he doesn't want to bring the guest out who is a Levite. At least I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be. A man from the tribe of Levi. Maybe not necessarily serving in the temple, but at least Levite by birth. Or the temple didn't exist yet. The tabernacle. But this old man tries to sort of appease the people there. We now have a question from Ukulele. Since a Levite was a worship leader, essentially, do you think this was his reverence for worship that the man wanted to protect him? I do think that played a factor in that. There was extra care being taken of this man, probably because he was a Levite. But also because this Levite and the old man who was, having him as a guest, they were both from Ephraim. Since they were from the same area, there also might have been some extra hospitality at play there because of that sort of home connection. So, whatever this old man's reasoning was, he really did not want this Levite to, be harmed or abused or taken advantage of in whatever way that these people of the town had in mind. They literally asked about having sex with him. But, the man putting him up for the night and having this Levite as his guest didn't want that to happen for potentially multiple reasons. Anyway, okay. So I think I left things off going into verse 25. So that's where we will pick up with the reading. But they wouldn't listen to him, they being the people of the town, I assume. So the Levite took hold of his concubine and pushed her out the door. The men of the town abused her all night, taking turns raping her until morning. Yeah, rough stuff. Finally at dawn, they let her go. At daybreak, the woman returned to the house where her husband was staying. She collapsed at the door of the house and lay there until it was light. When her husband opened the door to leave, there lay his concubine with her hands on the threshold. He said, "Get up, let's go." But there was no answer. So he put her body on his donkey and took her home. When he got home, he took a knife and cut his concubine's body into 12 pieces. Then he sent one piece to each tribe throughout all the territory of Israel. Everyone who saw it said, Such a horrible crime has not been committed in all the time since Israel left Egypt. Think about it. What are we going to do? Who's going to speak up? Now, I'm not sure if what they're saying is in reference to him cutting up the concubine's body or the raping that happened prior, but good grief. Again, I point back to Israel not having a king and the just general lawlessness. So earlier in the chapter, the Levite specifically wanted to find, an Israelite town, probably thinking that they would be safer, but apparently not. That is just, oh man. It's crazy to think that people supposedly living in God's land would do any such thing. People without a grasp on what God wants and why they should follow him can do some horrid things. Yes, indeed. Absolutely agreed on that. Whether they were supposedly God's people or not. Again, this flashes back to Sodom and Gomorrah, which God wound up outright destroying because of such things. But, at least as of yet, we read of no such fate for the town of Gibeah. So, yeah. It's just... I don't even want to summarize all that again, because it's just crazy stuff. And crazy bad stuff. I would say this is arguably worse than in the previous chapter or two when you had a Levite forsaking his other duties in helping the priests just to become a personal priest to one man who had his own idol. I think the body pieces were a message to the tribes about how people are treated and allowed to treat people. That, I mean, it definitely sent a message of some sort. He sent one piece to each tribe throughout all the territory of Israel, and everyone who saw it, which would have been supposedly people throughout all the different tribes, said such a horrible crime has not been committed since the time Israel left Egypt. So, yeah, maybe it was this Levite showing the rest of Israel a sign of, like, we've got some real bad stuff going on here, and maybe we should try and do better? I'm just checking the footnote here. So the Greek version around here, where he's saying, get up and let's go, but there was no answer from his concubine. The Greek version adds, for she was dead, which is kind of implied anyway, by the fact that she didn't answer and doesn't really seem to do anything after he, puts his body on her donkey and takes her home. Like, if there was some other sort of, response or even sign of life from her, I highly doubt he would have, cut up her body into pieces like this. And also the fact that she couldn't even make it all the way back inside. It just, I mean, she was for sure just absolutely exhausted, worn out. I mean, she had been abused all night. So anyway, yeah, just, I'm not saying anyone who, doesn't believe in God or doesn't follow God or doesn't, pay attention to God's commands will do these kinds of things. But, yeah, the lawlessness of humankind outside of seeking after God should not surprise us, given that stories like this exist in the Bible. And we even see some of the Israelites, God's chosen people, engaging in these kinds of activities. You would think that shouldn't happen, but it does when people are left to their own devices. Alright, anyway, I don't really have any other thoughts on the chapter. So, yeah. Guess I'll end the recording there. Yeah. See what I meant when I said not so PG? Again, I really think the whole emphasis on Israel not having a king that was mentioned at the start of the chapter was there to drive home the fact that, like, people were just doing whatever they wanted. Even the Israelites. So, left to our own devices, some people will do things like this. As to why the town didn't just get outright destroyed like Sodom did for doing the same kind of thing, it's hard to say, other than, I guess, maybe because they were still God's chosen people. But, yeah, not a good look at all on at least those Israelites. Anyway, yeah. Let's not dwell on that too much longer. So, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell if you're on YouTube to get updates when I post new videos. If you happen to be seeing this somewhere else, do the appropriate following or other similar actions that might be relevant to keep up with my videos and whatnot, if you want to do that. Wherever you're seeing this, have a look-see down in the description or whatever equivalent might be there. That'll give you more info on social media pages and other ways to follow me and keep up with my online activity. And down below, leave a comment, whatever thoughts you have. Just, yeah, feel free to engage in conversation. I don't necessarily want this to just be me talking the whole time. Which is part of the reason I'm appreciating the fact that, you know, I'm doing this stuff as part of live streams now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.